Hi, my name is Dena Strong. I'm with the Saving Ukrainian Cultural Heritage Online project, and I am the community coordinator. I've been there since approximately day 4, which means that there were 1,000 people already in the system, already doing the things when I arrived. And so I had a bit of a chance of catching up to do. And so this is some of the things that I've learned, trying to help people stay coordinated, stay on track on a high-speed emergency rescue project like this. So, our mission was to invent a way to rescue and preserve thousands of Ukrainian cultural heritage websites with an all volunteer team of 1,500 people from 20 time zones with zero planning time and budget, because when we started doing this, the bombs were already falling. So, as we invented new and better ways of doing things, we had to revise and redocument on the fly, but we also couldn't change this too much because there were over 1,000 people already in there doing the thing. So Google Sheet was the core of how we kept coordinated with each other. We had 23 tabs and counting, 4,500 rows and counting, 34 Slack channels, 1,500 volunteers, and our data validation and column synchronization lasted approximately 10 minutes. So we're doing the best that we can at the speed that we can, with the knowledge that not everybody has a chance to go through another hour-long training whenever our systems processes change, because our process we're changing all of the time. So um, some of the fantastic things that we managed to do. I will salute Ilya Kramer for the rest of my life for going from step 1 is install a VM to step 1, paste a URL here and go. Because the fact that he did that meant that all of a sudden people who were 6 years old could get in there and help us rescue these Ukrainian cultural heritage websites. He wasn't planning on releasing that until June. And the fact that he was able to make that transformation was really, really empowering for our people. But it also meant that the training docs refresh cycle be really relentless. On a fairly regular basis in my first 2 weeks, when I was in there 12 hours a day, I was learning something new, picking a training time the next day, making the training overnight, teaching it, and then learning something new again the very next day. Training people on a specific process was going to be a challenge. Our admins need sleep too, but the work continues 24/7. We discovered pretty quickly that Google Docs were faster than easier than GitHub to get updates out. So the website needed to be locked down, couldn't just be freeform editable by anybody, but it also limited the number of people who could make the edits. So you have at least a 30-minute turnaround for GitHub change. You have an 8-hour turnaround if your overworked admin is getting, a very well-deserved night's sleep. In Google Docs, it's 20 seconds. But on the flip side, you can't just make your Google Docs open to everybody. Also, every once in a while, you discover that you have to undesign things. We had automated IP and domain checks that we had to delete because having that many people hitting a 24-tab sheet with 4,000 plus rows meant that it really, really slowed down for a lot of people. We also had great ambitions of having data validated columns that would stay in the same place and be containing the same stuff. That didn't really last very long either. So in emergency situation, you do what you can, and sometimes you be aware that like the best laid plans are kind of out there. So don't teach processes, teach signposts. If you're saying do it exactly like this, you're going to be wrong tomorrow. You say read everything in the channel, there's too much to keep up with. Instead, say your team is in this channel. Look at the pinned docs for the latest instructions and check the tape on the training videos if you're going to be relying on them. If you find a troubleshooting doc, you can add it to the Google Doc yourself, and in the process, link to the chat thread where people will be able to identify the people who are working on it, the people who would know the most about the sort of thing. So if you know where to find the information, then you know how to keep up to date. These are the tools that we used for our toolbox. We had Google Sheets and Docs, we had Git and GitHub, we had Google Translate and Docker, manual web recorder, browser tricks and cloud, internet archive tools like Save Page Now and a GC Sheets plugin that was written just for us, Wikimedia Tool Forge for our Wikidata updates, Open Refine for helping search for particular types of content, Observable HQ and Vercel and Mapbox.gl for some fantastic visualizations, Google Colab and IPython notebooks for providing web interfaces for things. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kim Martin. I'm a history professor at the University of Guelph, and I've come to play the role of the metadata coordinator for Sucho. When the Sucho project started, there were a number of ways that you could add links or PDFs or images to the Internet Archive collection of Sucho that you can see here on your screen. Some of them involved finding websites and looking on the Wayback Machine to determine if things were already in the Internet Archive, and then adding things to a form. So you could upload items one by one or a small spreadsheet of items. And another option was to, of course, use the various web scrapers that you've heard about today. 15,000 items, or just over, ended up in the Internet Archive collection before we moved into different ways of doing this work. And a small group of us got together and realized that with all of these things, needed metadata. This is a screenshot of the metadata that exists from a document or a book where this was scraped from the web. So you can see that there's some very useful information like the host institution and the date it was added, but not necessarily that the kind of information that folks in Ukraine might need if they are to build back their collections and their websites. There's not a lot of context here. So a group of folks started working on a metadata template, and we used some of the items that, some of the headings rather, that the Internet Archive already provides, such as the title of the piece, the URL or some way of describing it or identifying it, a description, some subject tags, a language, and a license. And in addition to those, what's really nice about the Internet Archive's setup is that it allows you to create other metadata tags or metadata headings if you are interested in doing so. And we added 5 at the moment. That's where we're at. This is all a work in progress. The source URL that doesn't just necessarily point to the item in question, but back to the source from which it came. The host institution and location, which will help people be able to sort and search if they're looking in the archives in the future for things that belonged to them or to another institution. And we decided to keep the original subject headings and original description because we didn't want to anglicize or change or alter the hard work that had already been done to describe so many of these items by folks in Ukraine. We had to make a number of decisions, this was really where the collaboration came in as a group, because some of us are native English speakers, don't know any Cyrillic, others are librarians who are very used to working in different languages and are aware of things like patronyms and the need to transliterate. So we decided as a group that we were obviously going to use patronyms, that kind of third name, where they already exist in the data, and we created a document that will help people understand this, a Q&A document, so people can go and understand not only what a patronym is, but how you would go about adding it to metadata. We also decided to transliterate the host institution, and there's a great link in our documentation that'll teach you how to do that or help you do that. And then we also wanted to keep the Ukrainian descriptions, not only keep them, but keep them in Ukrainian. So a lot of this is copying and pasting for us, but there's also a lot of use of Google Translate to make sure that those descriptions do indeed match the object in question. As you've likely heard from other folks talking about Sucho, none of this could happen if it wasn't for true collaboration. And we have a couple tools in the metadata group that helped us get there. One of them is Google Docs. The thing you're looking at is on the slide is a Google Doc in itself. And then you can see a bunch of different links and a bunch of different spaces in that Google Doc that we have built out. This has been one of the main places we collaborate. The metadata spreadsheet, where each one of these 15,000 records has a row, is yet another Google Doc. And then, of course, there's Slack. There is about 81 of us in the metadata channel. Everyone has contributed, but there's about 12 to 20 of us that are very active in this channel. You can see we share videos like the great one that Alex put together. I share meeting minutes and meeting agendas, and we've all gotten to know each other a little bit in this process. So a quick shout out here to my new metadata colleagues. I now work with librarians and information workers all over the world, and it's been really exciting. So thanks again to everyone at Sucho for putting in the time.
Hi, I'm Peasley, and I'm the Situation Monitoring Coordinator for Sucho. Today I'm going to take you through a little bit of our background and what we've been up to so far. So the impetus of situation monitoring was the attempt to make sense of the rapidly escalating situation in Ukraine and prioritize the sites of highest risk in terms of on-the-ground action, and to make sure we capture anything less physical infrastructure that fed into servers and networks were damaged in the process. So a majority of our work takes place on Google, in Google Docs, and with all parts of Sucho, we are still adapting technology as needed, and our efforts are mainly to streamline the decision-making process. As you can see on this PowerPoint, we have some feed alerts that feed in from Twitter and Telegram that transition from manually entering this information, and now it's something that's been automated and doesn't require hands-on effort at all. And we also have been using it to provide critical and key information, the most important information that people would need to prioritize sites. The adaptation goes beyond the computer, as we're trying to still work to integrate emergency management risk matrices and other principles. And so these have already been applied in some form and have helped the prioritization already, but we're trying to implement that a little bit more fully. Our current toolkit is pretty similar to what a normal Sucho toolkit is. We are on Slack, we use Google Docs, but we go a little bit further out of the bounds of the standard web crawlers and whatnot. And the primary information gathering tools are like Twitter, Telegram, NASA fire anomaly maps, and whois searches, and modified matrices that are based on FEMA principles. Again, that ties back to emergency management. So yeah, it's all open source, and it's open source programs, open source information, and it requires a human element to make sure that whatever information we're finding is a little bit validated, as validated as possible, and to make sure we're not adding extemporaneous information that doesn't help Sucho's project. We work in a highly distributed environment, as you have already heard and as you've seen, and it allows the buy-in from an array of Sucho volunteers within the specific situation monitoring channel and team. It's allowed us to benefit from the knowledge of programmers, researchers, Ukrainian and Russian speakers, and others to provide around-the-clock support and response to anything on the ground that can change how Sucho needs to go about our work. Okay. And because Sucho is a grassroots project and highly distributed amongst mostly digital humanities practitioners, starting situation monitoring required a crash course in information security as it relates to protecting cultural heritage on the ground and our colleagues on the ground. It also includes safeguarding our work from bad actors. The theory is that if we can find it, other people who may not want to protect it will find it as well. And this meant establishing some parameters that are seemingly counterintuitive to a collaborative work environment, but very necessary. It includes implementing private channels and additional means of communication outside of Slack. So that is a very quick rundown of situation monitoring at Sucho. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and thank you so much.